So what do we want to do? I'm open to any specific ideas. Let's go through the normal stuff and let's just take it from there. So first thing is I want to make my grid. So I'm going to make a couple blank layers, and I'm going to call this one solid grid. And then I will call this one dotted grid. And I'll actually make a layer group and put those into it. And I'll call that grid. All right, so we'll start with the solid grid. I've got my black color selected, and then we're going to go to, oh good, the pop-up windows are working this time. And we'll do filter, render pattern, and grid. And I have a preset here that is not exactly right, but it's 1 inch grids, and I'm using 100 pixels per inch, so the grid size is going to be 100, and that's going to be 1 inch squares. And then I'll make the line size 2. I made this one is 25 by 15, so this isn't like a full size map that we're doing here. This is a smaller map, just for the purposes of being able to have a map that we can work with. So we've got a solid grid, which is fine, but I like to do the dotted grid to make it a little more interesting. So let me highlight that. I did a select by color, and then I went and on my solid grid I selected the black lines of the grid, and you can see I've got the marching ants selector going on all of those. Then I'm going to disable the solid grid so you can see that's not visible anymore. And I'll move up to the dotted grid, and I want to set my brush to be, I'm going to use the square, and I'm going to set it at an angle of 45 degrees, which makes it, you can see it makes it a diamond. That's obviously too big, so I'll make it a size of 3, and I'm going to do a spacing of, we'll do 600. And then I want to do a jitter of, I believe 1 is usually what I do. So what these are doing is, it's going to be a diamond shape, and the spacing says how far apart is each time it's going to draw. If you set a spacing of like 10 or something small, then as you move the brush, it'll look like a solid line. But if you set a spacing that's larger, it'll look like a dotted line, because it's only going to draw it every however many pixels. I believe it might be more of a percentage, not a number of pixels. So the spacing is basically 600% of the brush size is when the spacing is going to be. And then the jitter is how far side to side out of the line is it going to draw. So you get kind of this jaggedy edge. So that's what we're going for here. And then we're going to do stroke selection. And I want to set it to stroke with the paint tool. And then it'll use everything that I just put there. We'll do the stroke, and let's have a look. You can see, there we go. That's actually pretty good. So I'm going to do select none, and you can see that we've got now this dotted grid out there. It's a repeating pattern, so you can look at this and you can see that it's not completely randomized, but it's once we start drawing on it, it'll be pretty good, and you kind of get this more natural look to it. And that's our grid. So now let's go ahead and add a couple more blank layers. I'll put those towards the top, and we're going to call this one wall. And now let's adjust our brush. I want to go back. I'm going to use a round brush, and I believe we'll set it to 15. And everything else then got set to the defaults. The jitter for this one is just going to be 0.5. I want it to be a little jittery, but not too bad. Now we get into what do we want to do with this wall. It's with this wall, what do we want this dungeon to look like? I don't have anything in mind, so we can kind of keep this pretty basic. I'm just using my mouse. I have a graphics tablet, but I'm just using the mouse here to draw this one. And you can see, I'll just kind of show you. So I'm on the wall layer, and if I draw, you can see that it's got kind of a little bit of a of a jaggedness to it. If I turn off the jitter and I draw a line, you can see that it's much smoother. And then if I set that jitter to something high, so if I set it to 2, you can see it gets really jaggedy. So that's what the jitter does. It just gives out a little bit of roughness to the walls. And since we're drawing these dungeon walls, we don't want them to be perfectly smooth. We want them to have a little bit of an edge to them. So let me think if there's anything special I want to do. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make a little, I'll go up to this layer, and so just to rough sketch it, I think I want to have the entrance here, and then kind of do a little bit of a spiral where maybe there's like an island in the middle. It kind of looks like a whale. So here we'll do a fish, something like that. So anyway, but we'll do a spiral, and there'll maybe be a couple little side rooms, and then it kind of ends at a point that maybe is visible from this other side, but not accessible because of the fact that it's a large gap with water or lava or something like that. So I'm just going to erase that one. That was just kind of my rough sketch one there. So let's see what we can do here. And I'm going to start it here. And again, I try to roughly follow the squares so that it's easy for, if you're using this as a tactical map, that you can you don't have just these half squares all over the place. I mean, I will do that, and that's fine, but especially if you're in a smaller room, what I don't want is for you to have to deal with a room that has like no full squares in it, or a narrow hallway that has no full squares. So like when I come up over here and I'm going to kind of do this, you'll notice that I want to make sure that I've got some, squares. There's actual squares that they could put tokens on to represent the characters. So there we go. That's that side, and I didn't really do that the way I wanted to do it. So let me start walking, doing the inside of this hallway now. And same deal. I'm going to try to keep it so that I always have squares that people can put their tokens on. If you're using this on a virtual tabletop, I want you to be able to use the map. Okay. And, so even when it gets a little narrower, you still have squares that you can get to. And now this is going to be the island, if you will, that's visible from the other side, but maybe just out of reach. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to connect that there, but then I'm going to we will erase this and make this into something different. I still got the jitter turned on, but that's okay. So I'm going to erase that and this, and I'll erase this a little bit here. And then, oops, what did I do? Wrong thing. So we'll do that. Okay. And what I want to do now instead is I'm going to continue this down this way, and I'll make just a little side room in here. So like that. And then I can erase the little edges. There we go. So now we have a little side room. Now the difference here is that this is really a ledge, and I plan on filling this with water. So what I want is for this part should, maybe I'll actually have it connect here. And then this will be a ledge here. And it's a little hard now because I don't have any depth for anything. So, but I think what we'll do is we'll fill this with water. And so the way to get into this path is you'll follow down here, and then the treasure you're after is like on here. But the but this is going to be, that's not actually terribly far. So, you know, most characters probably could jump that. But if we fill it with lava, they might think twice about jumping over it. So, and then still on my brush, why don't we make just a little side passage here, and that we can actually even connect further down, and that might make it interesting for if there's something, there could be something in the way that's blocking the path right here. Maybe there's a trap that they're trying to avoid, and so by having a little side passage there, that gives the players an option to do something different. All right. So there we go. And I think we'll leave it at that. That's relatively, I could probably add something over there, but I think because I'm going to need to be doing some work to fill in this here with the lava. So I want to make sure I've got enough time to work through that. But that's our wall. Let me go ahead and add another layer, and let's start masking off the wall and see what that gets. So we'll select the wall, and then this one we're going to do a, sorry, wrong button, fuzzy select. I want to make sure I don't have feathered edges, and I want to select the part where the wall is going to be. So that's going to be here, and you can see it selected all the way around, which is good. And then I have this part here is also part of the wall. And you can see, so it didn't add, so it added that to it. All the sections now that are wall are now highlighted. So I can go down to my new layer, and what I want to do with these, actually I take that back. I want to go down to my grid, and since I've got the dotted grid here, I'm going to add a layer mask, and we'll do that. And then I will do it on the solid grid as well, so that they both have a layer mask. And then what I want to do is I want to fill the layer mask with black. And so I'll do it on the solid grid first, which you can see it did it on the here, but because that layer is not visible, it didn't do anything. But then I'll do the same thing on the dotted grid, and you'll see that it'll actually black out, or it'll make the grid disappear, because what I've told it is I only want the grid to show, I only want the grid to show on the parts that are not filled with black, so the parts that are filled with white. And so the only parts that are filled with white now are this interior section. I just filled black in the rest of it. So that takes care of that. But now what I want to do is I need to create the stone for this. And for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this and render this cell noise. And you can see it puts these little dots here. And what I use those as a base. And then what I do is I go and I do artistic and water pixels. And it takes a second for that to update, but then you can see it kind of makes this nice little pattern that looks very much like a stony type pattern. And so, and I just fiddle around with the smoothness and the pixel sizes to try to get it what I want. And if you don't do it, you can have a tendency to go too far with it and it ends up looking like camouflage, but you know, I could spend hours going through it, but I'll just leave it at that for now. And so that's kind of our stone. And I didn't do that properly because I left the little gap there. So I'm actually going to undo that. And we're going to select that again. So my perfectionist here. What happened is when I did the fuzzy select, you can see that it doesn't go, there is a little edge there. It's not black right up to the edge of the selection. And so what happens is when I fill it in, then it left a little bit of that line. So what I need to do is actually grow this selection. And I'm just going to grow it by 3, which now, if you look, you can see that the selection goes into the wall. And since this layer is underneath the wall, which this is the layer that's going to have the stone, it's under the wall, so that's great. The stone will disappear under the wall and you won't see it. So we'll just kind of go through that again. And we'll render, noise, cell noise. Sometimes I do new seed just so it looks different. And then we'll do artistic, water pixels. And there we go. And then just kind of fiddle with it some more. And we'll just go with that. So that is the, and then we'll do select none. You can see now the stone goes right up to the edge of the wall. All right. So the next thing that I want to do, and we'll do this one before we get into the whole lava thing. Let me rename this one to the stone, and then this one is going to be the shadow. And it should be down here. So this is what I like to do is put a shadow on the wall, because you can see that the stone goes right up against there, but it's very, it doesn't pop, if you will. It's just there. So I like to give it a little bit of depth by putting a shadow on it. So I'm going to go into the wall layer again and do the fuzzy select, but this time I'm going to put it inside the wall. And you can see that it selected this whole area. And I take that back. I'm going to undo that because I've got this section here, and I need to handle that a little differently. So I'm actually going to go in the wall and I'm going to select outside the wall again. So it's going to put it here, but then I'm going to select invert. And now it's selecting just this outside wall. Okay. And then what I can do is I can select, I actually need to do that earlier, but, oh, actually, no, that'll work. So then I'll select this. Oops. Did it select it? I don't know why it's not selecting that one. Let me change that. Let me start over again. I think I messed something up in that selection. So I'm going to select, I'll select in here, and then I'm going to select out there, but then I'm going to select invert. Okay. And I think because I tried to add that to it and that didn't work. So that is going to take care of that. And I don't know, let's give it a try. So that's the wall. And now what I need to do is I need to make a pretty big brush, and I use the one that kind of fades out. You can see that if I put this brush along where that edge is, it's barely going to stick out from the wall. So I need to make this much larger so that it actually is visible when it sticks out from the wall. I'm going to make it like just a little bit bigger, and we'll see how that does. And then the rest of it's fine. I'll still do the jitter. Maybe I'll make the jitter just 0.25, a little less jitter. And let's see how that does. We'll do stroke selection. Okay, and then I'm going to set the opacity to like 50. And so you see we've got a little bit of a shadow there, but it barely is showing up. So I think I want to do something a little bit more than that. So let me go ahead and set the opacity again before we do it. But I want to set this to be like 100 now. And let's see what that does when I stroke the selection. That's a little better for me. So that gives us a little bit of a shadow then on the wall. You can see not a ton, but just enough. And that gets us the bulk of the shadow part. But we will have more because there is this is not the only part where there's walls. This is more of a triple layer to this dungeon. So let me select none. And now what I want to do is I'm actually going to select inside. Oops, I'm on the wrong thing. I'm going to go back to the walls layer. I'm going to select inside here, and then go back to my shadow layer. So because remember, this is now a ledge that's going to go down into this lava pit. So there should be a shadow from here down into the lava. So let me go back to my brush. This one, because I'm selected on the inside, I don't need this one to be as large. So let me try to just do it. I'll just do it as 50. And then we'll stroke that selection and let's see how that looks. That's a little too much. Okay, just go with that. So that one stands out a little more than this one on the edge because of where it is. So, but I think it's I think it'll be fine once we get the texture in there. I think it'll look good. So we've got that, and we've got our path now. It runs all the way down there. There's really two things left to do. The first thing will be to add some floor texture. And I want to put that actually underneath the grid. So let me go ahead and label that as floor. So this is what's going to fill in this down here. And for that one, I do a render and noise and do this plasma noise. And you can see I do just a new seed and then add a lot of turbulence to it. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes, I just kind of click on the new seed a little bit to get something. The bluer and darker colors, when I get to the next step, those are the ones that'll be darker for whatever it's worth. So I'll go with this one. And obviously that's not what a dungeon typically looks like. It's pretty good for Pride Month, but not necessarily what we want for our dungeons. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to color and I'm going to colorize it. And I'm going to just choose a gray, a really light gray. So you can see I'm just dark enough where you can see that texture. Okay, so right about there. I don't have a particular shade that I use. I just get it so where you can see that texture and it gives it a little bit of, again, just it helps it pop a little bit more. All right, we're down to our last part here, and that is right here where I want to have lava. And for this, we're going to do the same thing as with the floor, but we're going to make it a little different. So first thing I want to do is I want to block out this part of the floor because we're going to need to be able to see down into this. So I need to add a layer mask, just like we did with the grid. I'm going to go to the walls and then select this area inside the wall. I'm going to go ahead and grow it to just make sure I get all of it. And then I'll go down to my layer mask and I will fill with the black in the layer mask for here. And there, now you can see that that part is now open and you can't see the floor there. It's basically masking that area. The interesting thing is that now I can add a layer underneath this, and because I've got the stone here and I've got the floor texture here and I've got the wall and all those layers are above, then the only part that's actually visible down here is this section right here. You can see if I turn off the background, you can see that that's the part that goes away. So whatever I put on this layer, the only part that's going to be visible to me is the part that shows here. And I can actually prove that by, if I make a brush, and I'll make like a really big brush, and let me just make it like a red so that you can see I'm on this layer and I'm going to draw everywhere, but you can see the only part that shows through is the part that is not masked. Okay. So that means that, this layer is going to be our lava. And there's several different ways that I go about doing the lava, but but this will be the way that we'll do today. So I'm going to go to, again, render, noise, and it's going to be the same thing as with the floor. We're going to do this plasma noise, and I'll just do a new seed, and I want it to be really turbulent. So we're going to get something and go. I don't really want to have the black, the really dark black stuff in there. Some of it's good, but I want to it can look weird. So I want to actually have it be more of the yellows. So I'm going to just keep hitting the new seed. I had a few that were better, and now it'll take me forever to get back to those. So I'm trying to get to where there's more yellows here. I'll go with that one. That'll probably be all right. Okay, so there's that. Now what we got to do, and this is the tricky part for me, I am colorblind, so I am not good at picking out colors to put on stuff. So what I end up doing is I look for the hex codes for something. So in this case, I'm making lava. And so I want a hex code that would be a good hex code for lava. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to colorize this layer. And I'm going to select a hex code. I'm just looking it up online. And I have no idea if this is any good. F2F217 is what it comes back with. That looks fine for me. It's got, it's, to me, that's really yellow. I assume that's a really yellowy color. And it's very bright, so obviously it looks really hot. But it also has these blacky areas, which is what you see with lava. You'll see those patches where it's slightly cooler, and so the lava has solidified and is a blacker color. So to me, that is a pretty good one. So at that point, that is pretty much it. That gives us what we were after. There are a few other things that we could do. I want to save this to just I'll just put it here. I just want to make sure I have it. That gives us what we were going for. We just wanted a thing where we had a ledge that looked down onto this lava, and with a couple side passages, and there we go. If we wanted to get fancier, we could make this edge a little thinner to establish that there is a ledge here, or we could actually draw some wall edges to make it clear that it goes down. So why don't I go ahead and do that just to kind of show what that would look like. I'm going to put that above the lava, but so, and I am not great at this, so this one can be a little bit, could be hit or miss. So let's trying to think how I want to do this first, because really it would be the shadow that we've got to put on there, because we'd have to show, we're basically showing the edge. So what I want to do is select kind of a grayish color, and so for this layer, what I'm going to do is then I'll draw with this. And it's a little big. It shouldn't be that, and it would go down on all the sides. Okay, so it'd be something like that, and then above that we would draw, and we're going to go back to a regular sized brush, and we will not have any jitter. And for this one, we're going to draw these like things like this to kind of give it this edge. And sometimes this works better than others, so we'll see how it does here. And there should actually be an edge at the bottom too, so I might go back and do that. So I'm just kind of doing this one very freehand, and obviously we would normally do it through the whole thing to sell the illusion of it, but this one I'm just going to do this. Oops. Try that again. And there is a technique of needing to get the right angles and all that. So and then for the purposes of tying it together, I'm just going to hand trace this edge. and it's not perfect because I'm not covering up all the lava. And this edge is a little bigger than I would normally make it. So anyway, and then usually what I would do is actually probably come back and then I'd shade it a little better. Yeah, it's acceptable. It's not great. This is not how I would, if I was making a map for a module, I would take a little more time with it. But this is what helps to show that this is a ledge, and that this is that the lava is underneath it and is not, that this is not a wall. You can also then add another layer to help sell that, where you maybe would draw you would kind of put in some shading up here, and sometimes that helps to, so it's not really a shadow, but it's just something to help provide a little bit to show that there's an edge, something like that, to establish that as like the top. You can also add in some lines if you want, where so you basically put some things like this to establish that this is an edge, and it's almost like little lightning bolts here that you are drawing around here. And again, that all these little details can help you sell that this is the top edge of a cliff, and the combination of these things can be the difference that makes you, that just gives you that illusion that there is an edge here. But, I feel like Bob Ross a little bit, and I think happy trees, happy trees. So something like that. The down ledge here didn't work out quite the way I was hoping, and I think I don't really care for that. Normally, what I would do then is make the. So here I'm going to switch this. What I would probably do more is shade in the bottom. So what I might do is get rid of this shadow. So let me erase this shadow that's up here. This is the nice thing about layers, is that I can go in and just erase the part that I want. So, because obviously there wouldn't be a shadow on this anymore, because I'm actually drawing the ledge, so I don't need the shadow to help me show the depth. But what I might want is for there to be a shadow on the bottom, where to show where it's gotten deeper here. But that's not going to really be as what I want from it. So I think the thing I would probably do to make it look a little better is I would make this smaller, make this so it's a little steeper. This one is just a little wide. It kind of looks more like rumble strips around a Formula One track, as opposed to a ledge. But that's what I would go with. It's something like that. I would definitely clean it up and tweak it until I felt that it was good. The nice thing with using GIMP is that I can basically turn all that stuff off and just go back to where I was. And there we have that set up. And honestly, for the purposes of a map like this and the style that I use, this is usually pretty good. I usually save those ledges for when it's something that's a real steep drop, where it's a crevasse that goes down, hundreds of feet or something like that. For something like this, where this is only like, 5 or 10 feet below, then I don't necessarily go through all that trouble. It ends up making it look more complicated than it needs to be. So, but there we go. What time do we have? Oh, okay. Well, I got one more thing. Let me just throw one more thing out here, just since we're doing the map. Let me put this above the stone. There's another thing that I do sometimes, and it's this hatching. So let me select the stone areas again. So it's those areas there, and I will grow it. Grow. All right. So what we do here then is, I believe it was this layer. This is another interesting trick. Is there's this render. Sorry, it's not render. It's noise. Nope. Sorry, it's not noise. It's distorts. Mosaic, and you can see it puts this mosaic in here. And what's interesting here is that you can use this if you're trying to make like a hex grid, because you like, let's say I set this to 50, and then I set the neatness to, oh, sorry, I go the neatness the other way to 1. You could see it actually makes like a hex grid. So if I do 100, because these are 100 pixels per inch, I've made basically a hex grid now on there. So if you're ever making a map that you need a hex grid, this is the tool that you would use, is the mosaic, and you would set the neatness to 1, and then the size to whatever the size of your grid is. But I don't want that, so I'm going to reset this back to what it was. I want it to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to make mine like 25, so something like that. And then I want the neatness to be way the other way. I want it to not be neat at all. And I'm going to set the size just a little bit bigger, because that's more what I'm after, like right about there. And you can see what it kind of gives you is this jagged stone look. And so sometimes I use that to just give a just to add to the stone illusion by putting those cracks in there. It gives this illusion that it's stone. Sometimes, and I'll duplicate that layer, and just to show this, sometimes I will even go in and with an eraser, and I will just leave the edge of it. So I'll take the eraser, and I'll so that the hatching, these like hatch marks only are at the very edge of the wall, and which helps to kind of just so you only get those little cracks right at the wall itself and not all the way through. And it's very subtle. I mean, you almost can't see it, but it I think it helps to sometimes it helps to just give a little bit of extra depth to the map that you're doing. And just little touches like that can make a difference in helping to sell give it a little bit of 3 dimensions for your map. And these are all things that even if you were going to do the map in black and white, you can just desaturate these, and they all just kind of layer down nicely.